Hi, my name is Lisa Ryan, and I'm an executive in residence at Dominican University. And I'm conducting the last of the webinars today, which is on self-assessment and career and vocational discernment. And some of you may have attended Elise Lasser's webinar on managing career anxiety. And not knowing what you want to do can be a great source of anxiety for people. And I'm here to tell you to not let that happen. You know, that your life and your career is a journey, and where you start out is not necessarily where you're going to end up at all. But you do need to have a starting point. You do need to have a launching point. So don't let it paralyze you that you're not exactly sure what you're going to do, because your life and your career is going to be a journey. And researchers say that your generation will have 15 to 20 jobs during your work life due to just changes in automation and technology and just these rapid changes. And I'm just going to tell you my story and my husband's story, actually, to illustrate how where you start out is not necessarily where you end up. So I attended college and graduated with a degree in economics and French, and went straight back to graduate school, which I don't necessarily recommend. But I obtained a master's in city planning and a master's in real estate. And then I went to work for a quasi-public development agency in Boston. And I worked there for a year, and I hated it. I learned that I didn't have the temperament or the disposition to work for the government. Decision-making was too slow for me. I felt like people didn't work that hard. I thought that they didn't necessarily make the decisions for the right reasons, that they made decisions based on constituents voting for them versus what was right for the public good. And so for a lot of reasons, it was a wrong career for me. I then went to work in commercial real estate for 10 years. And I had a very successful career in commercial real estate, but I didn't really enjoy it. I was good enough at the numbers, but what I really loved were the relationships. And then one time I needed something more flexible because I had young children, and I went to work for a former Trammell Crow partner. And he had started his own M&A advisory business, making introductions between commercial real estate companies. So we weren't a broker dealer, but we were helping commercial real estate companies acquire other commercial real estate companies. And this was in the 90s, and multiples on earnings were extremely high, and nobody was successful doing this. And I had a client that was a family-owned commercial mortgage banking company. And they said to me, this isn't working, and we give up, and we want to grow our business through recruitment, and we want to build regional offices. And you know our family, and you know our business, and you know the market and the industry. And we want to set you up in business, and we want you to grow our business nationwide. We want you to recruit for us, and we want you to build these regional offices. Well, I had never done that before, but I just said yes. And that's going to be a key thing in your career journey too, is be open, because opportunities will come up, and say yes. So I did that, and I loved it. I loved the recruiting and working with people and helping them find jobs. I loved finding the people that were the right fit for the organization. I could see the impact that I was making on this family and their business, and it felt really meaningful and impactful, and I loved it. And from there, I went to work for Family Office Exchange, and I ran their executive recruiting and consulting practice for almost 4 years, human resource consulting and recruiting. And after that, I went to work for 2 other boutique recruiting firms, all related to family offices and family enterprises, before launching my own firm in 2018. And now I have my own recruiting business. So you can see that where I started out is very different from where I ended up. My husband started his career. He was a chemistry major. He was in customer service, worked for Conoco. He became sort of a sales rep, and then he went into product development and product marketing and regional sales manager. And then we had 3 children in 14 months. And I had to stop working for a little while. And he felt like he had to earn more money. And he segued into institutional investment sales, completely different. And then a number of years ago, he had a very successful 20-year career at that. But it's not a great business to grow old in. So a number of years ago, he segued into private client wealth management. So those are just a couple illustrations of where you start out is not necessarily where you're going to end up. But at the same time, you need to have a starting point, and you need to understand, where to begin to launch your career. So we're going to talk about how you figure that out. So the first part of that is self-assessment and becoming self-aware. Success and happiness and career fulfillment really lie at the intersection of what you're good at and what you really love to do. And on top of that, you need to layer, what's happening in the world economy. What are the industries that are going to be growth industries? And you also have to layer on, what are your values? Are you a risk taker? Do you like security? Do you like to work autonomously? Do you like to work as a team? Do you like to collaborate? Do you like to be competitive? Those are some of the things that you need to think about around your values. So if we think about, it's not enough to be good at something. You can be good at something and still not enjoy it. And you can love to do something, but not be good at it. And that's not going to be a good starting point for you either. So it's really at the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, and what your values are, and then layer on what's happening in the world, in the economy, and the industries. So for example, you might be great at numbers and you might be great at accounting, but you may be a total extrovert. And you may not want to work in tax and audit in public accounting, but you might really enjoy selling those services. Or you might really love marketing and advertising, but you may not be a creative person at all. But you may, be well suited for the business aspects of that, working in operations or finance. So, what I like to do is, there are also a lot of, and I'll follow up with an email, I have all sorts of tools to help you kind of inventory what are your interests, what are your skills, and what are your values. I have checklists and questionnaires to help you answer those questions. But it's another good idea when you're trying to identify what you're good at, talk to people who know you well. Ask your parents, what do you think I'm really good at? Ask your professors, what do you think I'm really good at? Ask your advisor, what do you think I'm really good at? Ask your closest friends, what do you think I'm really good at? There are also online assessments, Myers-Briggs, or the Strong Inventory assessment. There are a lot of online tools to help you assess your interest and your skills and your values. And I also have handouts that I can provide to you that I can email to all of you. So what I like to do as a first step is I like to ask people to list 10 things that they love to do and 10 things that they're really good at. And then begin to look at, where do those things intersect? Where do they overlap? So for example, you might be great with numbers and accounting and so forth, but you may love really thinking strategically. You might love thinking about the big picture. And so a career in finance planning and strategy might be a nice fit for you, where you could start out as a financial analyst and progress. But in that role, you're essentially like an internal consultant to the company, looking at the different divisions and how they're doing. That might be something that interests you. You might be great. You might have great skills in developing relationships, and you might love helping people. And then you might want to consider, a career in a nonprofit, or potentially client relationship management in a field that's very personal, like wealth management. Or you may want to consider consultative sales, or you may want to think about human resources. So look at the intersection of what you're good at and what you love to do. And if you're having trouble understanding the overlap or that intersection, come see me or go see another executive in residence to help you understand the intersection. There's also a good tool, and I have this that I can email to you as well. It's called ONET Online Skills. So it's capital O, and then it's an asterisk, net, online skills. And it's a questionnaire that you can fill out. And based on how you fill that out, it will link you to occupations. So another thing I like to do, and this, I recognize that this is an investment of time and that this takes a lot of work, but it's really going to help you. I like to ask people to focus on the following questions. I like to ask people to think about what accomplishments and projects they're most proud of and why. I like to ask people to think about, what is your favorite class and why? I like to ask people about their life goals. And I like to ask people to describe the people they most admire and the people they most enjoy. And then I like to ask people to think back through every job and internship they had and what they liked about it and what they didn't like about it. And all of this information is going to help you self-assess. So after you've been through this whole process, you've been through these exercises, you should be able to identify a number of careers that you'd like to explore. So now what do? So the next step is to actually speak to people who work in these careers. So what you want to do at this point, let's say, for example, you have identified that you're really interested in marketing and advertising. Those are the two fields that you're most interested in. The next step of this process is to identify professionals who have careers in marketing and advertising. So how do you go about doing that? Well, you can come talk to me. You can go talk to another executive in residence. You can go speak to, hi Anna. You can go speak to your marketing professor. If you had a professor of advertising, asking them for suggestions. Speak to folks in the Career Development Center. Look at your network. Think about your parents' friends, your family's friends, and use LinkedIn. Do your research on Dominican alumni who work in marketing and advertising. And then what you want to do is you want to be able to speak with these people. Okay, so what you're going to be doing is informational interviewing. Okay, and I know that a lot of Dominican students, a lot of students in general, a lot of people in general, networking, informational interviewing is scary for them. I'm going to let you in on a big secret. People love to talk about themselves more than anything else in the world. They love to talk about themselves. So, and you can have a whole conversation and ask them questions, and they may learn nothing about you, and you're going to leave that meeting and they'll be like, that was the greatest kid. Like, I really want to help this kid. I really do. So what you want to do is reach out to these people on LinkedIn, the referrals that you've received, either through an executive in residence, your family's network, a professor's network, people you've researched on LinkedIn that are Dominican alumni. And you want to reach out to them and connect with them on LinkedIn and send them a message that says, I found your profile on LinkedIn, or I was referred to you by so-and-so. Your background is very interesting to me. I'm really interested in exploring a career in marketing or advertising, and I would really love to hear about your career journey and learn about any insights that you may have for me. Completely non-threatening. You haven't asked them for a job. You're not asking them for a job. You're asking to learn from them if you can share your experiences. And 9 times out of 10, people are going to be willing to do this because they have been in this position before, or they have kids who have been in this position before, or friends, and they're going to want to help you. So you reach out to them and you make the connection. You explain that you're just looking to learn about the industry. You'd love to hear about their journey and just glean any insights you can from them about the industry and how to launch your career. Okay. So now you've gotten the responses. They're willing to meet with you. Or in this case, in these days, they're probably going to be willing to have a Zoom call with you or a telephone call. So now what do? So you want to make it informational. Meet with them and say, tell me about yourself. I mean, how did you know that this is what you wanted to do in college? And how did you get started? And how did you get to where you are today? And, just tell me a little bit about your journey. And tell me what a typical day is like. What is a typical day like for you? And what do you love about what you do? And what don't you like about what you do? And do you have any regrets, in your career? And what are your long-term career goals? Okay. And then if this starts to sound interesting to you, if what they're saying sounds interesting to you, then you may want to say, wow, this, thank you for sharing. And you want to make sure this whole time that you're gracious the entire time, that you're expressing gratitude. So listening keenly to the insights that you can glean from them. And then you kind of want to turn it and say, wow, I really appreciate your sharing your story. And I specifically like hearing about your typical day. And it just sounds really energizing and dynamic and creative. And it really resonates with me. And I think it aligns well with my skills and with my interest and my values. And I really think this is something that I would like to explore. What advice do you have for me? If I would like to pursue this career in marketing, what advice do you have for me? And listen to what they say. And then you always want to say, are there people that that might be helpful for me to speak to as I explore this career path? And would you be willing to make that introduction? Or could I possibly reach out to that individual on LinkedIn and mention that you referred me to them to explore a career in marketing? So, yeah.
We have, I hate to interrupt you, but Anna asked a question on the chat. And I want to make sure that I relay the message. So I'm going to actually unmute Anna, who's not named Anna. I'm going to unmute her right now so she can ask the question because it's a really good one.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, sorry I came in late.
That's okay.
So I have a question because what you were talking about, like reaching out to people through LinkedIn. So I did
Mhm.
that a couple of weeks ago. I found this person on LinkedIn, and she works at Leo Burnett. She has like a very interesting background because she had some like schooling and works in Venezuela, and then she moved here. So I was like, oh, a Latina in marketing that works at Leo Burnett. That sounds amazing. So I sent her a message, and I was like, hey, it would be great if you will be open to talk to me a little bit more about your career journey, blah, blah, blah. And it was like the personalized connect message on LinkedIn. And she accepted to connect with me, but she
That's
did not respond to my message. So I don't want to double text her. So I don't want to be like too overpowering. And this is the second time that it happened. So I don't know what to do.
yeah. You know, I would not be put off by that. I mean, I think that a lot of people are not very savvy LinkedIn users. And
Okay.
so the fact that she connected with you means that she's open to getting to know you. And so that happens sometimes. Like sometimes people see the connection, but somehow they miss the message. And so I wouldn't let that put you off. I would reach out to them again. But another thing I would do is I would just look at your network, okay, and see if you have any second degree connections. Is there anybody that you know that is connected to them? The other thing is, different people handle this differently. But if you're a first degree connection with someone, it may say under their name 500 plus contacts, right? And if
Mhm.
that is in blue, that means you can press on that and you can see all of their contacts. They have not hidden their contacts from you. So you could go through all of their contacts and see if there's anybody else that you know. And then what you want to do, you want to follow up on your own, but then anybody that is a second degree connection or anybody you know of their connections, you want to reach out to and say, I've recently connected with so-and-so. I haven't sent them a message. I was wondering if you would be willing to, I'm interested in they look like they have a very interesting background. I'm interested in getting to know them better. Would you be willing to reach out to them and make an introduction? But don't be put off by the fact that they haven't messaged you back, because
Okay.
the fact that they've connected with you, they wouldn't have connected with you if they weren't open to getting to know you. So it's either they're not savvy with LinkedIn or they've gotten busy, but I would not let that deter you.
Okay. So do I message her again? I'll try the contacts, but if nothing
Well,
did, because
here's another thing. So now that you're first degree connections with this individual, you can go up to her contact information. And if you press on her contact information, often they'll have their personal email address. So you may have access to her
okay.
personal email address at this time. And so I would send her a personal email. And again, I would attach your resume. And if you want help drafting the letter, Anna, I'd be happy to work with you. But there's a way that you can, and in class, I've talked about handbills before, which I think are a really nice networking tool that's it's much less threatening than a resume, because it's not like I'm looking for a job kind of thing. But to draft a letter in a way that's just very flattering to her about how interesting her career looks to you, and that you're just launching your career and considering, advertising is of interest to you as well, and you'd love to hear about her journey. And it's a very non-threatening, it's very flattering, very flattering. So I would see if you have access to their personal email, I would consider messaging again. I wouldn't do both. If you have access to her personal email, I'd just send a letter there, see who your common connections are, see who you know of her contacts.
Okay, sounds good. I'll look for that, and then I'll schedule a meeting with you so we can talk more about it.
All right, that
Thank
sounds great.
you.
You're welcome, Anna. This is a great way to explore career alternatives. If you're still, if you're still sort of navigating between alternatives, this is a really great way to explore career alternatives, to sort of zero in on something. So once you've had, you're just going to keep repeating this process with different people, right? And then once you've had that conversation or that Zoom call or whatever it is, make sure to follow up with a thank you note and be grateful and gracious for their time, and mention something specific that they said that struck a chord with you. If you want to reiterate, do you have any other referrals, or any other insights? It's a good time to sort of reiterate that as well. Or you can say, thank you so much for referring me to so-and-so. I'm following up with them. And then the other thing is, you don't want to hound these people, right? But they've made an impact on you. And so it's fine, a month later to send an email. I just thought I'd update you on where I am. And, I've talked to these people and this is what I'm looking at. I think also, when you ultimately land somewhere, clearly you want to circle back, because this is an important network now that you really want to, capitalize on and maintain that network. So I think that, you follow up and you say, here's where I landed, and I'm so grateful for your help and everything that you did for me along my journey. So yay, you're going to do that. You're going to repeat that process, and you're going to get your first job, and it's going to work out. You're going to get it. And it may not be, where you're going to end up, but you've got a starting point. And then once you're there, make the most of that opportunity. Don't, it may not be the place you end up. It may not be the perfect job, but make the most of that opportunity. Work hard, be positive, be punctual, be on time, be friendly, absolutely make the best of that opportunity. And then, always try to promote yourself from within, even if you think that this isn't the long term. I had a student come and talk to me. He's a staff accountant. He has a job as a staff accountant in a small kind of family business. And I said, look, this is a small family business. Work really hard at this, do a great job for them. And then just say, hey, I'd sort of like to gain some exposure to the marketing area of the company. Do you think I could, gain some exposure there? Or I'd really like to gain some exposure to, finance and treasury. Is that a possibility? So advocate for yourself in that way. Or if there's the next level that you want to get to before you make another change. Advocate for yourself. I'm really interested in becoming a senior financial analyst. What do I need to do to make that happen? Where do I need to grow? Where do I need to develop? People respect that. People are going to respect that you're interested in growing and developing and being the best that you can be. And I think always remain open to possibility, and just say yes, because you never know where it's going to lead you. So be positive, remain open, and don't make this about being scary. This is about being exciting. This is a journey, and it's exciting, and it'll change, and sometimes it'll be scary, but for the most part, it's exciting. And you're going to find with this whole networking thing, or these informational interviews, that first one is hard, and that second one gets a little easier, and then that third one gets even easier. And by the time you're on that fifth one, it's like, wow, this is really interesting. This is really fun. I'm meeting a lot of interesting people, and I'm learning a lot. And so that's my advice on how to take the first step in your career journey.
Does anybody have any questions for Lisa? Well, I just wanted to say that I didn't realize. So you mentioned having access to email and LinkedIn as a first connect, right? With the first connection. And it's something that I've never even realized myself. So when you connect with somebody, you're absolutely right. You have access to that information if they've allowed for you to see that. And so I think that to me, that was a huge takeaway and a great idea, especially when you're connecting with somebody on LinkedIn and they haven't gotten back to you. Because I know personally, there's a lot of times where I'll get a connection request with a personalized message, and I just didn't happen to see the personalized message until like a week later. And I'm on LinkedIn all day long. And so I think that was a really, really, really important kind of little piece of information to take away that's important. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Shannon, have you done information interviews in the past?
Yes, I have done informational interviews. They've been over the phone. Not recently, though. The most recent event that I've done, or proactive thing that I've done, is going to networking events, and that was, of course, before the shelter in place. So, but I have followed up with a few individuals who I've exchanged business cards with, and keeping up. I guess what. Now I have a question. Thank you, Jamie. How do I keep up or maintain the conversation or the relationship with a new connection?
Right. Yeah. And so, I think that's a good question, because you certainly don't want to feel like you're hounding people,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, you do want to maintain that relationship and that connection. So I think just, I think everything is about the way you say it. So I think, you can follow up, every month, every couple months, and just say, I was so grateful for the time that you spent with me. I gained so many insights from you, and I'm so appreciative that I want to sort of keep you apprised of my journey and where I am. And, since we've spoken, this is what I've done, and this is what I've learned, and this is what I'm doing going forward. So I think just that, but you always couch it in a way that you're so grateful for their time and the insights that they shared. And you want to keep them apprised because they've been an important part of this journey for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bob is quoting me in the chat. So my go-to line is, there's a fine line between following up and a restraining order.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So take initiative, but don't show up at their front door.
Right.
But yeah, I totally agree with Lisa. I think it is important to make sure to maintain that connection and to follow up. Absolutely. Liz, I might pick on you. So we've got, what I kind of like about this group is, first of all, we're small. And second of all, we've got a mix of undergraduates, graduates, and then also alumni. So Liz, I'm just kind of curious if I can pick on you for a second. Have you done any information interviews? How's your experience been with those?
I have, but it's very new to me because that's not something we were encouraged to do. And for those of you that don't know, I have a background in theater. I was a theatrical designer for a couple of years before I started the MBA program at Dominican. And it was not something that was encouraged so much in theater. It was kind of like, if the bigger someone was, the more inappropriate it was to speak to them, because that's kind of what we were taught, because you don't want to invade a celebrity space, I guess. And so it's a very new concept for me, kind of being in the business industry, but I have done a couple of information interviews. I did one with a woman who works at Hallmark in the finance department. And it was really interesting to me because, having no background in business, it was interesting just to talk to her about the different areas of business that she's worked in and how she got to finance. So that was a very new experience for me, but I found it to be very helpful, and I wish it were something that were more encouraged in the theater industry. But yeah.
So I think, I think it's very flattering to people. If it's handled properly, I think it's very flattering to them that you want to hear about their journey and that you want to gain insights for them, which reminds me of another thing that I meant to say, which is, when you have your first job, sometimes another thing that can be helpful is if there's somebody in the organization that you really admire, and you think that you're interested in a career path similar to the one that they're on, to say, would you be willing to be my mentor? People, that's so flattering to people, and they get it because they started out at one point too. But I watch you, and I'm really impressed by your career path and how you conduct yourself, and I'm wondering would you be willing to be a mentor to me? And people, it's very flattering to people. So don't let this be scary. I know that a lot of Dominican students, in this whole networking thing, and this, we're calling it informational interviewing because, it's less threatening, and it's really to learn and gather information rather than to find a job, although the goal is ultimately to find a job. But this is going to become, critically important now, much more than it was before. So it's important to get yourself out there and just, throw yourself out there. And it's one of the, it's kind of like, how you're dreading that final project, or you're dreading that term paper, like you're putting it off, like you don't want to do it. And then you start doing it and you're like, you know what, this really isn't all that bad, and that's the same thing with networking and informational interviewing. You dread it, and then you jump in and you start, and then, all of a sudden you're enjoying it. You're meeting a lot of interesting people.
I have a question, Alyssa. So
Mhm.
something that I have heard with networking is that it has to be like an exchange, and that you also have to bring something of value to the table. But how do you deal with that? Like, what if the other person's like way too higher up, and you're just like, I don't know, how can I be of any help to you? So
Right.
they don't feel like they just wasted their time.
Yeah. I think that is always, look, I think that is always a good thing to offer. And again, it's just really an expression, a different way of expressing gratitude. So they recognize that, if they're 15 years older than you and, well into your career, that, there's probably not going to be a lot of ways that you can help them. But I think just sort of saying, as you conclude the conversation, you've been so helpful to me and I'm so grateful for your time. Is there some way I can be helpful to you? And just, there probably isn't, quite frankly, but they're going to appreciate the fact that you thought about that you offered that. And it's just another way of sort of expressing gratitude.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gianna's got a question. Gianna, if you're on the line, do you want to ask?
Yes. So I recently got a job offer.
Yay!
Yay! Yes. And it's supposed to happen once I graduate, after school, everything. But I am moving, and I have asked to transfer that offer to not be in Chicago, but to be in Seattle. And I have been in touch with the recruiter.
Okay, I'm sorry. Say that again, Gianna.
So I got the offer, but it was for Chicago, and
Right.
I've been in contact with one of the recruiters to change that to be in Seattle. However, nothing is certain right now just because of everything going on. And I just want to know how I should approach that.
So they responded and said what? They said
Normally, so I was supposed to do an internship for them this summer. However, that got changed to like a virtual week online. Not necessarily the job I was going to be doing. So they said traditionally, what you would have done in the internship, we would have taken that feedback and put in a transfer to the new location. But with this, they have just told me that we'll do a check-in during that week to see if your decision has changed. But I will move, that is certain. So I just don't know how to go about it just because of everything that's going on, and like if I should contact someone from that office.
Yeah, that's kind of, I was wondering, now that you have to be a little careful about this because you don't want to, you don't want to tick anybody off, but I'm wondering.
The person that I did talk to, they seemed, they didn't seem discouraged by what I was saying. They knew, or they recognized that some people were going to change their decision too. They did mention that.
Okay. And who is your contact, like an HR person, or who's your contact?
They're a recruiting specialist.
Within the firm?
Yeah.
Well, one thing I would do is I would look at the Seattle office and just see if you have any second degree connections with these people, or see if you're connected with them in any way. And then, I might talk to the HR person and just say, since, does it make sense, since this is something I'm interested in exploring, that I kind of get to know the people in that office. And if you have a second degree connection in any way other than this person, obviously, you may want to raise that and say, I noticed that I have this second degree connection with this individual. Do you think it makes sense for me to sort of get to know the people in that office?
Okay. That's very helpful. I just didn't know how to go about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Gianna.
Are there any other questions from anybody? Well, we've got everybody all together. We've got a few more minutes.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I know I just talked about when I did my informational interview, but when I talked to her on the phone, she had actually offered, their corporate offices in Kansas City, and she had offered to me, like, if you're ever in Kansas City, let us know and you can come in and shadow. Is there ever an appropriate time to like ask if you can shadow without them offering, opposed to just like speaking on the phone with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you feel like you've really developed a rapport with somebody and you've really, you should be able to sense that. Like we've really developed a rapport here. You've really gained some interest. You've gained some insights. They've been very generous with their time. Maybe they've made some referrals. I think you can, soft kind of sell it by saying something like, does your firm ever allow individuals to shadow executives to sort of learn more about your business and so forth? Just not like, can I do it, but is this something that your firm considers? And then she can put it off on, our firm policy is we don't do that, versus I really don't want you following me around. It gives that individual an out. So that's how I'd handle that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa,
Hi,
No,
Bob.
I was just going to ask if there's any more questions. Bob, go ahead.
yeah, no, I just wanted to say I really appreciate, I took notes while you were speaking about comparing the 10 things you love to do and 10 things that you're good at. I think that that's something that's really important. And I just wanted to say thank you for that tip. I really, and in addition to all the questions like the life goals and the favorite class and why and who you admire most and looking at, I think that that's a great way to see like the intersectionality between those is a good guiding feature. So thank you.
Right. I'll tell you something else. I mean, because I've been through all this stuff myself. You know, I think going through each of your jobs and each of your internships and really writing down what you really, and this stuff takes time, you know, really what you liked and really what you didn't like. All of a sudden you begin to see some patterns, right? You begin to, you kind of go, aha, like I didn't realize that was important to me, but obviously that's important to me, you know. I think also really thinking about your accomplishments and like, you know, when I did that, you know, I've been through all these exercises. I remember thinking, okay, I ran the marathon. Well, that's kind of like, you know, and then all of a sudden I was like, well, you know, I've kind of achieved the vision for my life. And it's like, wow, you know, that's an accomplishment. So, you know, take a step back. Don't just think about like the obvious of that tangible, I got a whatever GPA. But what is it? You know, I mean, you students at Dominican, you have so much to be proud of. But sometimes you're too close to it and you don't see it. But you all do some pretty great things, you know. I had a student come see me one time, and she, in addition to her work and internship experience, she told me that her parents were not married, and that they each had their own businesses, and that she handled all of the customer service and all of the customer interactions. And was that something she should have on her resume? And I said, well, why are you doing that? I said, do your parents not speak English? And she said, yeah, my parents don't speak English. And I said, okay, so that's huge. I mean, you're supporting both of your parents' businesses as a translator. And yes, that does need to be on your resume, and we'll find a way. I think that, you know, some of what you all do is so second nature to you that you don't recognize, you know, just how special you are. So those are, you know, when you think about your accomplishments, take a step back from it and really think about those things. Because I mean, when I did BCBP 200 and we had those interviews, and my husband, you know, was an interviewer, and he said, these kids, I mean, they're almost all working, you know, at least 30 hours a week and going to school for, you know, full time. And I said, that should be the first thing you have on your resume. That should be the very first thing you have on your resume. So I think that sometimes you all take things you don't realize, and how and why that differentiates you. You know, that makes you a really different 22, 24, whatever year old than your peers. And I think, you know, becoming self-aware about those things, stepping back and really thinking big picture, and being self-aware is really going to help you promote yourself, and for people to really appreciate, you know, how special you are.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everybody as we're wrapping up. So I think Lisa kind of hit it spot on. So sometimes I feel like our students don't really realize, you know, like I'll never forget when I first got to Dominican, I would have students that were trilingual, and it would just come up naturally in conversation, and it wouldn't be anywhere on the resume. And I'm bringing that up because I would give my left foot to be able to speak more than one language. But sometimes I think, as you mentioned, Lisa, you're so close to it, you don't realize how unique that is or how special that makes you. So one thing I want to make sure to do as we're wrapping up here is to encourage you all to meet with the executives and residents. They're here to help you kind of pull out some of those special qualities that you all have. And they can help you think about what are you bringing to the table that should be on your resume, as Lisa's pointed out. So I want to make sure that that we thank Lisa. So help me with a virtual round of applause.
Great being with you.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Oh.
So make sure.
Oh wow, you guys are pretty Zoom savvy.
So we've got one more session left. I'll be talking to everybody on Tuesday. I'm going to be bringing a special guest with me, so stay tuned for information on who's coming to my session. And then we will be wrapping up our entire webinar series. So it's been really fun doing this, and I look forward to our last session. Thank you again, Lisa. Thanks for everybody for coming. Another great talk.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.